Hey Fixers, I'm Dr. Jeanette Benigas, the owner of Fix SLP, a grassroots advocacy firm here to challenge the status quo in speech language pathology by driving real change from insurance regulations to removing barriers that prevent full autonomy like the CCC. This podcast is your space to learn, engage, and take action in the field of speech language pathology. We don't wait for change, we make it, so let's fix SLP.
Jeanette, it's another week in the Fixerville. Here we are, and you hit the road this week.
Oh my gosh. I drove 13 hours for a 45-minute meeting.
With no guarantee that that meeting would happen because you got like an hour out the door and you said, hey, what if they don't have a quorum?
Yeah, do you want to explain to people real quick what a quorum is?
Yeah, so a quorum at a publicly held meeting, and some of you may know this, you have to have for the bylaws or perhaps with governance, you have to have a certain number of members of a board that are present in order to have a meeting. So if we'll say for hypothetical sense, let's say you have 8 members on a board. If you don't have at least probably 5 people there, then you can't have a meeting because it's not well represented. And in the case of the Delaware Speech Therapy Licensing Board, it has happened before, and no offense, this does happen, where they have not had a significant number of the minimum quorum of members. They didn't have a meeting that month. And that does happen. They've had to shift meetings to a different month. So Jeanette gets in the car. She heads, 12? It was a 12-hour round trip, I think, at least, maybe 13.
It was 5 hours and 58 minutes to get there, but when I left, I hit rush hour in several states. It was a long drive home.
So this is, it was insanely far for me. But yeah, there's no guarantee. So I appeared via Zoom. Jeanette was there on about 2 hours of sleep. And it was a good meeting, actually. The most impressive thing that was so heartwarming, Jeanette, was that we are now, and we went into the meeting with 35 Delaware SLPs signing our letter to the board, indicating the questions that we have concerning their licensure change. And we had, I think, at least 4 SLPs show up at the meeting. We had an audiologist come out and speak for us. And so there was an excellent representation at the meeting of people that wanted to ask questions of this board. And we were glad to be there. And it was, the board had very little to say, but wow, did our fixers really show up in a big way and ask the questions which were needed.
The exact words I said to you were, our fixer babies are all grown up.
No.
They did so well. I was a bit annoyed because, they were following procedure and we submitted that letter with our signatures, but also with the 35 other signatures. And the board did not recognize the 35 people who signed that letter. They just said that you and I submitted the letter when clearly It was 20 pages long. We had lists of people who emailed us. We had physical signatures that were sent in. If they missed pages, 5 through 18. So when it was time for the public comment, which was part of the purpose of this meeting was public comment on their proposed changes, they gave me the floor first, which I was surprised. And I had to kind of go back and forth with the lawyer running that meeting. And I said, I don't want to go first. Basically, that's not how I said it. I was a little more professional. But what I said was, let's give the floor to your licensed SLPs in your state. It is most important to hear from them. I'm here as a representative of the firm, helping them to advocate. But they're the ones you need to hear from. They're the ones who have something to say. And she did not like that. I almost felt like it almost felt like I was shut down. Like I was passing on being allowed to talk. And I made sure that didn't happen. But I felt like she just sort of dismissed me. So,
well, the start of the meeting was clunky because this lady that we're speaking of it's a peculiar meeting, how they run them, because normally the board president is kind of the person who directs the meeting, and they have one that she does do a lot of the talking. However, there's a lot of deferring to what is staff, if you will. And this particular person, I'll go ahead and just use her first name, Eileen. Eileen is the one of the assistant attorney generals for the state of Delaware, and she kind of takes the lead on a lot of the meeting as far as the flow and the procedure, which is a little askew, but that's how they do it. And she started off in the beginning saying, "I want to welcome and introduce, I'm very happy to introduce," and then her video froze.
Which was
And so
amazing. Perfect timing.
it was kind of interesting. So she froze for, I'd say, a good solid 60 seconds, and then came back, and as happens on Zoom, she wasn't aware of what was heard and wasn't heard. And the whole meeting, we had an ASHA eavesdropper, since they, I guess, weren't officially introduced. And Jeanette, I'll let you speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were aware. We might miss some things, but we don't miss everything. And there were a lot of people in that meeting. It was my assumption that this was the first time they've ever had that many people in a meeting, because they were a bit beside themselves with attendance and all the things. So we were paying attention to who was in that meeting. And it turned out there was a representative from ASHA there. And we wondered, that particular representative has some involvement in the Interstate Compact, and the Interstate Compact was on the agenda. So I wondered if maybe that person was going to speak then, but that person did not speak at all. That person was the Director of State Legislative and Regulatory Affairs. And so that job description, it says responsible for advancing the public policy objectives of ASHA by representing the association in all phases of state legislative and regulatory advocacy on state licensing and certification. So that person was there and, again, didn't say anything. But it brought up a lot of questions for me. I wondered if that person would have said something if we weren't there, if our representation wasn't there. We can only speculate. Why were they there? The only thing I can think of, unless you have a different spin on this or take on this, Preston, is that they were there for two reasons. One, we know that ASHA always comments publicly. They will submit a public comment to Delaware on this issue. And we will be watching very closely because those have to be published. We need to see what that said. We did the same thing in Michigan with Medicaid. We're going to monitor that, because the minute it crosses into lobbying or advocating to their benefit, we have a problem.
Right.
So my guess is she was there to monitor the discussion. They always submit those letters in the final hour. They always attempt to have the last say. So that letter will go in at 4:55 Eastern Standard Time, 5 minutes before close of business on December, what was the date, Preston, 14th or whatever day?
I think the 14th, yeah.
Yeah, it'll go in at the final hour. So probably she was there to see what was said so that they could spin their version to their benefit to somehow carefully and craftily sway the board in the direction of their benefit.
Yes.
They want to hear what was said. They want to write that letter.
I can already
quote,
see it now. Gold
clarify.
standard. I've got a golden ticket. And yet currently, with Delaware regulatory laws that exist, they require more CEUs. So yeah, silver and gold, eh?
So I'm sure that person was there for that, to monitor what was going on, but probably also to speak up in the event that misinformation was shared, which I didn't hear any misinformation shared. So
well,
I don't
never
know.
Spoke up.
Yeah. What do you think, Preston? Why do you think that person was there?
I think you're moreover correct. There will be a communication that's issued. They want to be uh, dialed in on the conversation. That's fair. I'm more curious about what brought them there, how they showed up. Was this organic? Is this something they just kind of showed up and they were bored on a Tuesday? Was it that they're following Fix SLP? If they are, hi, nice to hear from you. Or were they, solicited by perhaps somebody in Delaware? And I have no problem that that's the case. But it's always interesting. It's like, what are you bringing to this conversation besides that same mealy mouth letter that this is the gold standard and it just stands for so much. And we've, done all these things for our field. Please judge us by our intentions and not by our lack of results for the last quarter century. It'd be fun to see. It always frustrates me. It reminded me of those days when I was in city government and we would have these school board charter hearings, and one district would send its army of lawyers into a meeting and sit there and talk down on something else and tell you why this is awful, you should do this. And I always think, wow, our association is paying a very high priced attorney. I mean, I'm sure this person's likely salaried, but nevertheless, attorneys aren't cheap and their hours are accountable. So rather than spend that in a way in which is addressing reimbursements, rather than addressing possibly some of the working conditions that we're seeing and actually taking stands on caseload caps or bad actors in our field. No, we ASHA spent some time sending an attorney to a meeting to promote the CCC, more or less, I think, or at least protect it and monitor it. And so we'll wait for the statement. I think you and I both know likely what that'll look like.
And to be clear, this is not a membership issue. This is a CCC issue. This person was not in that meeting because of ASHA membership. They were in this meeting because of the CCC. So this is how CCC dollars are being spent. So you being forced to buy that CCC sent this lawyer to Delaware. That's what paid for this lawyer to be in Delaware. You paid for that.
Yeah.
And it feels like a big conflict of interest to me. So I did put out a reel, but not everybody consumes our content in the same way. ASHA stands to gain a lot of money if this proposal is enacted in the version we have currently read. That the CCC will be required and probably required ongoing if they enact it as stated. What does that do for ASHA? That does a lot because 1,000 SLPs every year will be required to buy the CCC. That keeps their ledger funded. So they have a vested interest in making sure that this happens. And they have to be very careful again about what they say and do, because I'm sure they'd love to scream from the mountaintops, yes, do this. It's that gold standard. But they can't because they have some FTC laws they have to follow. So I don't think they should have been there at all. They should not have been there at all. Not one word that they would say in that meeting, or they couldn't contribute to this conversation. Legally, they can't contribute to this conversation other than to give a very neutral letter. They shouldn't have been there. In my reel, I said, you should have sat this one out. Take the bench, ASHA. Take the bench. Towel off. It's our turn.
So, Jeanette, to circle back to Delaware, the case was made beautifully by the fixers that we had there. They will deliberate for, I suppose, another month and a half, come back in January. They indicated they will respond to the points that were brought up in the meeting and in the correspondence. If you're out there, we still would love to have signatures from Delaware SLPs to add to it. I know we've added one or two since the meeting a couple of days ago. So I think that there was no feedback from the board, Jeanette, but it's clear that we've made those points. They are listening. What we're hoping for in a best case scenario is that they pause, go back to the Delaware Assembly next year and ask for something a little bit different than what they've got. Is that going to happen? We have no idea. But I am very, very proud that this issue's only been on our plate now for about 50 days, Jeanette. And in that short amount of time for an organization that's barely a little over a year old, we mounted seemingly about 4% of the SLPs in Delaware on this issue, and even got an audiologist to join us the other day as well in the meeting and give some excellent thoughts. So, wow, I think it's a fantastic response, and it was a proud moment for Fix SLP.
Yeah, I really was proud. I was happy to make that drive to be there in person and witness all of that. We'll keep taking your signatures through December 11th. So if you'd like to send those over, you can go to www.fixslp.com. There is a bar at the top of the page that says something to the effect of "Take action in Delaware now." I have source documentation. I have everything you need to look at, a copy of our letter, what to do if you just want to sign electronically. It's simply just sending us your name. Or if you think you can print it out and take it to work and get a couple signatures there, we'd love to have that. Or even the other day, somebody printed it out and signed it and then sent it back to us because she wanted us to have her physical signature. So you can just follow all of those instructions there. We'd love to submit some more on your behalf, and we just need that by the 11th. One related statement. Preston doesn't even know this is coming. I had a very, very, very productive conversation with the executive director of the Ohio Speech Language and Hearing Board yesterday. Mr. Thornton is a wonderful man who has spoken to me both on the phone and in person multiple times since Fix SLP started. I just really respect him and his insights and the things that he has to say, even when I don't ask for those things. So I called him to get clarification. One of the points that we made to Delaware was, you have an inequity issue here. It is not equitable to require the SLPs in your state to have the CCC when every other SLP in a state that has signed into the interstate compact can practice in your state without the CCC. We put that in our letter. I said it verbally in the meeting. And then afterwards, I tried to engage with their SLP compact rep just to make sure that my statement was correct. She was not willing to engage with me. So I just said, that's okay. I'll just call the guy in my state. So that, again, that's what I did. And he was wonderful. And he and I spoke about it for a little while. And he said, I think you're correct, because in Ohio, we don't have to have the Cs. He said, I'm not part of that committee, but everything I've read and everything that I've looked over would indicate that you can, in fact, go to Delaware to practice without your Cs, even if they require it. And after we got off the phone, we agreed he would only respond back if he found something otherwise, but he still did respond back and emailed and said, hey, what we discussed was correct. So two things here that I've learned from that conversation. One, I already knew this, but again, confirmed over and over and over again, the CCC is not part of the interstate compact. It is not written into any rule. It is not part of the regulation that the state has to adopt. It's not part of that. It will not be a part of it. It cannot be a part of it. And if there is a sniff of it being a part of it at all, it is supposed to be reported. And so we have that avenue. I've been on a team that's been sitting in those meetings for a couple of years now. They are closely monitoring that situation. So that's thing number one.
Yeah. And I just wanted to jump in there. That's not accidental either. And that's the message that I would like to convey, not only to the audience, but also we're trying to convey to Delaware, is that the reason the compact was written that way, to define our profession based on master's degree, clinical practicum, examination, those things that exist in pretty much about 47, 48 and a half states right now, is what defines the field. So it would have been illogical for the compact to have done like Delaware is thinking of doing, which is to lean fully into this certificate. They understand what defines the SLP. And so if you believe in the compact, if you think, wow, this is a great thing, and it really is for opening up that ability for SLPs to provide care across all 50 states, especially in the technological era, then that's the example. Those are the goals. This is what does it. don't go into the darkness, Delaware. Don't go back to a pre-1984 footing. And that's why those things exist. So look to the compact, if anything, as your guide. Sorry to jump in, Jeanette.
That's okay.
That's important.
The other thing, I think this is the most important thing that I got from Mr. Thornton yesterday. He was really interested in what was happening in Delaware. He had no idea. Obviously, states aren't following what's going on, which was one of my dreams for Med SLP advocate, which is now has become Fix SLP for all, but a place for information to flow through so states know what's happening in other states. When we first approached Delaware, we let them know, hey, no other states do this. They were shocked. They didn't know. And so yesterday on the phone, he was very surprised to hear that this was going on. And he clearly understood the implications of this, but also understood why a state board exists, why a state licensing board exists, why ASHA should not be wrapped up in any of those things whatsoever. And what he said to me was, it's clear to me they must not have a lobbyist monitoring what's going on in their state Congress. He said, because a lobbyist would have alerted them immediately to this bill that was passed before a Fix SLP ever came on the scene. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure the state board supported this. They wanted this to happen. I don't think they had the information that they needed to know that this wasn't the right thing. But a lobbyist should have known that. A lobbyist should have seen why this would have been a problem. So we don't know the exact involvement of the state board when this was put forward. But two things came out of this conversation. Number one, if you are not attending your state board meetings and you can get there, it is clear to Preston and I, after sitting in a couple of these things, that we need to have representation in every state board across this nation every time they meet. Because it's not that these boards are doing anything nefarious. These are good people volunteering their time to protect consumers, to help define what a speech language pathologist is, audiologist, hearing aid dispenser in our states. We need these boards. We need their advocacy. We need their rulemaking. We need them. But also, this decision was made because people didn't understand what the implications of the decision they were making. And so now that we have fixers who are well educated on these topics, as demonstrated by the fixers in that meeting who were so articulate and wonderful, we need you guys in these meetings, listening, monitoring, engaging during public comment, which happens at the end of every meeting like this. If there's something to be said, say it professionally. This is why 10 of us have come together and have been rotating through the interstate compact meetings for the last 2 years. And they're always happy to have us there too. They're so kind to us and often thank us for being there, and very different than what we've experienced in Delaware. But, be a part of that process. Get together with a group of your colleagues. You can let us know what's happening. We can help. We can help gather. We have these state teams. We're going to be proposing this to the 20 state teams we should have by the end of the year. But all of you need to be sitting and listening and watching and taking note of what's happening in your state. And what he said was, because the whole point of me saying all of this was, now we're hearing from people, I was going to let the CCC go, but what if this happens in my state? This probably, while we can't say this will never happen in your state, the likelihood that it would happen, if we are engaging and being mindful and watching, or if we have a guy like Mr. Thornton in your state who's going to be watching and engaging and being like, hell to the no, this ain't happening. It's not going to happen, because now we're smarter and we know better. All of this started before this bill was passed, 4 days before Fix SLP made its very first post. We are living in a different time. The curtain has been lifted. We are all smarter, and the face of our community has changed because of the information we've put out. We can make a difference. It doesn't have to get this far. We can stop this before it even starts if we're paying attention. So that's my charge to all of you. Start paying attention to your state boards. Know what's going on and be a part of the conversation. You don't need us to do it. We can't do it.
Yeah.
We need
And
you.
again, we don't have access to the big databases like ASHA does. We don't have the lawyers and the millions of dollars of revenue. But in 50 plus days, we assembled 36 now very spirited SLPs in a small state who just have their eyes open. And we're opening the door to a conversation about what licensure is in this state. But if in 50 something days on a something as bland as a licensure discussion at a board, if we can do that in 51 days, what can we do on issues of reimbursement? There's a way you engage at a granular level. And I think this is what we said before at that state level to really put it right there before the people in our field to just grab it and wrap your hands around it, hold these people accountable that are on these boards, whether it's private companies on their reimbursement and really just shooting a shot across the bow at them, or reimbursement with Medicaid in your state. There's a way you do it paternalistically where you just take people's money and you're some dim and distant office that you might go into every once in a while, or you can do it where you engage the grassroots. This shows that it can be a different way. And that's where I wish we could have a conversation. Some of those resources that are out there could be used in a more effective way, but Asha doesn't want to have that conversation. So we will keep on moving forward.
Keep on moving forward. This is a good point, good stopping point for us to jump into why we're really here today. This was not our planned content. It's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah.
How do you celebrate? Do you celebrate Thanksgiving? What do you do?
Well, here at the Lewis house, it's always kind of an off and on schedule because my daughter shares with her mom for different Thanksgivings. So I don't have my daughter here this year. And Charla's schedule, my wife, she took a job recently with a charter jet company, and they are now starting to operate full steam. We really didn't know what her schedule was going to be until about a day ago. And so it does look like she'll be here on Thanksgiving. I think it's going to be just an intimate dinner between the two of us. My parents are both passed on. So I'm looking forward to just a quiet Thanksgiving, looking at my beautiful wife across the table and really celebrating our first year of marriage and our first Thanksgiving as husband and wife. And that to me sounds very pleasant, Jeanette.
I think you should have her fly you on that charter jet to Ohio and sit across from your personal wife and your fixer wife and be thankful for both of us because you gained both of us this year. That's how that one should go. You can borrow my daughter.
I think it's a very lovely idea. However, I will warn you that charter jet alone would probably be more in the ASHA budget and not the Fix SLP budget, because getting on that jet is probably an entry level of about $25,000. So
if you leave now and drive, you can be here in time.
I could. I could fire up the Preston Express and we could be on our way. So how are you celebrating Thanksgiving, Jeanette?
So it is not a holiday to my husband unless we celebrate it on the day. So when we first got married, we would drive hours upon hours to be with both families on every holiday, and I hated it. And so made it clear once we started having kids that would not happen. So now we split. We go every other. Christmas is the big holiday. So whatever year we're Christmasing with whatever family, the opposite is spent. Easter and Thanksgiving is spent with the other family. So we will be traveling about an hour and a half to my husband's family home that he grew up in, where I will be bringing my own pumpkin pie because my mother-in-law makes this weird sweet potato thing.
Careful.
She knows I love her. She knows I'm going to tease her about it every time because the first year I was ever there, I love pumpkin pie, okay? I took a big bite of that thing and I was like, this isn't pumpkin pie.
Mm.
But his whole family, they love it. It's their tradition, but I got to bring my own. So we'll be going there. It's always great. I have a new sister-in-law. We're all sister-in-laws. My husband has all brothers, and I have a brother who's not married. So I've got sister-in-laws and a niece and nephew on that side, and we'll go enjoy his family. I get along famously with all of them and enjoy their company. My daughter came, I love this little story. My daughter came home from school yesterday. They had their Thanksgiving dinner at lunch, and my kids were both thrilled that they offered gravy, which apparently they don't ever do at school, but also their mother never does it because I do not like gravy. Don't come at me with that. Anyway, my kids were thrilled that there was gravy, and my daughter discovered that if you mix your corn with your mashed potatoes and a little bit of butter, it is delicious.
Mm.
And she said that the other kids were making fun of her, but she just thought it was so good. And I said, you know what, Sade, you got that from your mama. Because you're right. Mashed potatoes, butter, and corn is how you should eat that on Thanksgiving. It's how I do it every year. She learned it without me even teaching it to her. I've passed on something really good.
That's wonderful. I
Only
think we're
having
both thankful for a lot this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought about that. We haven't listened to the submissions, but we asked people to call in to say what they were thankful for at work or speech related. So we're gonna play some of those for you. And I kind of tried to think about what I might want to say that was related to my job or, to speech. We could probably spend the rest of this episode sort of talking about that, but this isn't about me. But I just want to say my job has changed a lot over the last year. A year ago, I was still a college professor. I was doing my mobile fees business very minimally, almost more as a hobby because I enjoy it. But obviously, my job has changed. So I'm really thankful if we're going to take this from when I left academia and really jumped into growing my business and then giving more to Fix SLP. I'm really thankful for the impact Fix SLP has had, I think, in advocating for positive change within the field. I'm really passionate about it. I drove 13 hours the other day just for funsies. So I haven't had this kind of passion and fire in me in a long time. So it feels really good to kind of be, I guess, getting myself back. And so I'm thankful for the opportunity that all of you are allowing me to help guide this because truly this isn't me. This is just me giving some skills that I have to really help a bigger cause, I guess. It's fun to watch the impact we're having. I'm thankful for this growing community of fearless fixers that believe in our mission, who are working alongside of us, for the people on the team who are amazing and who are doing the same thing. I'm thankful for that. And then for my fees business, I'm making meaningful changes there too. The opportunity to share my knowledge through that with the local clinicians who are around me, the continuing education course that certainly I teach a lot of those for a lot of different companies, but to do it myself this year with my colleague Tim Stockdale was amazing. And I'm thankful that I was able to do that and that people actually registered and came because you never know when you do those kinds of things if it's going to be well received, and it was. And then I'm really thankful personally for the resilience that I have. I've always known, especially since my dad got sick and passed, that I have a lot of perseverance and endurance in me. And to leave a role as a full professor, which is the top, I was a full professor. There's no promotion after that. To leave that to do things I truly believe in, both unpaid and then leaving a salaried job and just kind of having this vision and being able to do that. I'm just really thankful for the opportunities that this community is allowing me to have, and that people keep calling me for fees because that's what's paying our mortgage. I'm getting just enough of those studies to be able to do that and us squeak by for me to give my time to this. So I'm thankful for that. And I'm really hopeful that it just continues. That next Thanksgiving, there'll be even more to be thankful for. So how about you, Preston?
Wow. Well, I'm thankful for our colleagues that I work with, not just at Fix SLP, but I'm thinking about in my day-to-day job. A lot of the nurses that are out there, OTs, PTs that I work with, and their contributions. It's amazing. There's an individual respect in our community that you earn with those colleagues that you work with. And then there's always that mysticism that I see sometimes about what an SLP does, which is sometimes maddening to me after all the millions of dollars that are spent. Sometimes we're still just trying to find our voice. And I think that's sometimes because we haven't, clearly defined ourselves beyond a certificate. But anyway, I won't preach on that any longer. I'm also very thankful for this movement and for you and the friends that I've made. I make no secret, being an SLP to me it's very rewarding. It's a job I love. It does impact the patients in a positive way. It spoke to me at a time in life because I had a lot of family with dementia. I grew up very young age in a nursing home environment, working with people that needed to find their voice or be more safe in a certain environment. But I did back into this field in a way because I have a former broadcaster, as some of you may know. I had a brief stint in politics. And there's a saying in politics, Jeanette, that one of the things somebody misses the most once they leave is that the phone stops ringing. And that's very true. I used to, just get really charged about having a little old lady down the street call me because she couldn't get her trash can out to the curb. And she wanted to know if we could do a waiver on a handicap basis to have them come up to her doorstep and get our trash bin and move it out to the street. And, little things like that meant a lot. And so now sometimes those emails that show up or those questions or the text just asking, hey, this is going on in my state. Can you do anything about it? I'm even reminded recently about, we've had Tiffany on the podcast before about the whistleblowers that are out there. I'm part of some groups there where I hear just horrible things that are going on out in the field. And I'm able to maybe lend a voice here or there and some advice. And so I think early on when I entered this profession, I wanted to provide that in a certain way, but I didn't plug into that academia scheme at all. I wasn't the guy that was going to be at ASHA and, with a cutesy little chart and, making a presentation. That's not how I operate. It's a little different. And so finding a way to be a voice for people, to, try to find a way to lend a hand, I'm thankful for that. It's sometimes our day-to-day jobs can get a little monotonous. A lot of us, when we get to this age, I'm 43, start looking at different opportunities that are out there beyond the profession. This is a good way to still be involved and to renew, I think, the passion that I have that brought me into this field and still feel like I'm contributing beyond just the initial or the immediate patients that I have, which I dearly love, but this adds something a little extra, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah. I resent you making fun of my poster presentations at ASHA.
I think everybody's different, but that just wasn't me. And when I would do these things and turn in posters in
I know.
college, I just get skewered. And some of those mean old biddies that taught up there were just, I'm sorry. They just were like, you don't do it like everybody else. I'm like, I'm not like everybody else. And it was just, it was maddening. I don't fit into the mold of the ASHA fanboy, fangirl, so sue me. I'm different. Find
Yeah.
a way to
No,
utilize me in a certain way. And they were just mean. Bunch of mean
I
old
always
boys.
laugh. I laugh when I think about this. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben was one of my students when I was teaching remotely in Indiana. And I think it was probably the last day of the semester or something. And he said, no offense, Dr. Benigas, but you're not like any other professor we've ever had. And I don't know. It went through my mind at the time. I don't know if this is a compliment or like a dig, but I took it as a compliment because I don't fit the mold either. I never did. I never will. So it is really cool to have found a place to belong. So we've got some messages from what other people are thankful for. I'm going to play this first one. It only says it's 6 seconds long, so this might have been a mistake, but let's hear what it is.
I don't cry in my car. I listen to Fix SLP podcast on YouTube.
Okay.
Succinct.
That she was thankful for that. Let's just jump right into another one.
Fix SLP. Wow. Less than 2 years ago now, that name wouldn't have been recognized. And we would have just been in December paying our ASHA dues like we were and complaining about it and crying on Facebook and posts and in our cars and to everybody who would listen about how we dislike this organization, ASHA, but don't have anything to do about it. And in comes Fix SLP about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and it changed many SLPs' lives for the better, and it continues to do so. Advocacy is one of the biggest things that we can have, and knowledge and understanding is what fuels advocacy. And so Fix SLP is doing all the right things by just providing information and education and guidance on what the CCC is, what certificates are, what things we are required to have. So Fix SLP has provided the resources that these SLPs need out in the community to make decisions for themselves that ASHA is willfully not providing and purposefully being deceitful about. I really am appreciative about the honesty and the openness that Fix SLP has, that they have come out to share the knowledge and be open and present with us as a group and as a new organization. And I am thankful for all the work that everybody has put in. Jeanette, Preston, absolutely everybody are also SLPs, also living and working through these same conditions that everybody else is, and really doing some wonderful work. So I just want to say thank you again. We appreciate you very much, and please never stop doing what you're doing.
That was sweet.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, here's another one.
I'm really thankful for the opportunity that this profession has given me to work with children and help them find their voice and share their joys. Just being with them in the moment when you really can make an impact and see that change in their eyes is such a gift. And it's a reward that you get from doing this profession that not a lot of jobs in the world offer. So I'm extremely thankful for that. And my name is Karen Jacobson, and I wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving.
Great.
That makes me so happy. Thank you, Karen. I think this is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this topic today. Is it feels like a time of year professionally when there kind of is a lot of like grumbling and gloom and doom and we're all unhappy, but this is why we do this. This is why we're SLPs, exactly what Karen just said. And so it's good to remember those things and be thankful for the opportunities to be like Karen.
And I have a lot of fond memories around the holidays for some of my patients over the years. I'm sure you were the same. Dysphagia patients that previously would not have been able to enjoy the meal that's up and coming. Also being able to communicate with loved ones more effectively at the table. Mm-hmm. So it's a good time of year. I know we're stressed out, but to think about how we left our patients going into the holidays, it's very commendable. It shows a big part of what we do.
Yeah. Here's another one.
I'm thankful that 3.5 years ago, I had the courage to leave my full-time job as an acute care SLP and start my private practice as a mobile feast provider. As a result of my faith, my business expanded to provide contractual services to schools, skilled nursing facilities, and rural hospitals. I now employ 9 clinicians. This field has provided me with the opportunity to pursue entrepreneurship, specialize in areas that I am passionate about, and autonomy to operate my business with superior work ethics. SLP entrepreneurship has truly allowed me the opportunity to be the type of employer that I would have wanted to work for. I advocate for school caseload caps, realistic work expectations, and fair market wages.
Wow. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Right there.
Taking it and running with it. And
9 clinicians too.
Yeah. And for the folks out there that do fees like you, Jeanette, thank you so much, because I don't know if I've ever told you this. Really, one of the best speech therapists in terms of clinical skills that I have ever known in Arkansas was providing fees 10 years ago. And she was just running into all kinds of barriers with being able to provide that service. And I don't know if she's still doing that to this day. I know she's taken kind of a non-clinical job. And that is such a it just hurts my soul because I know how great she is at everything she does. I hope she's still providing fees, but it's the folks like you and this submission here that just show we've got to keep pushing it forward because it's better for our patients and it's better for our field.
Yeah. Wow. Fees, it's tough. Mobile fees is tough, especially now there's a nationwide provider who has bought out a lot of independent folks and really dropped the cost and is making it difficult for people like me to stay afloat. So good for her.
Yeah.
Well, Preston, we spent a lot of time discussing Delaware. We had meant for this to be a much shorter episode. So I think that's maybe where we'll wrap up.
It's been a great year so far. Well, we're going to continue into December, and we will keep telling the story. It changes every day. There's new things that are out there. There are new victories. Sometimes they're big, sometimes they're small, but it never seems to stop. And we really appreciate the opportunity to continue to reach out.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate, everybody. We are so thankful for all of our listeners, for all of our followers who engage and share and comment and who are part of the conversation, to our sustaining partners who make things like trips to Delaware possible, who make movements like petitions happen. We could not be doing this without you. So thank you to all of you, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for fixing it.